This is gonna be a really fun project. We're gonna be making groovy emojis. We're gonna go back in time and take an emoji and turn it into something very funky and groovy with lots of colors and patterns. So we're gonna need something to trace for our emoji, a circle shape, a pencil, and a Sharpie to get us started. Now the first part of our project is finding the center of our paper where we want to put our emoji. So I'm going to do it in pencil first, and then I'm going to trace it in Sharpie. Trace out your circle, pick an emoji you'd like, and sketch out any of those shapes for the face. Maybe you want to do the one with the stars as eyes. Maybe you want to do a big giant smile. Maybe you want to do one that's crying. Pick an emotion and you're going to sketch out your emoji design. Now you probably noticed I drew really lightly so that I can adjust things as I need it, which I did. Okay, no artist can possibly draw one thing and then have it perfect. You're gonna always need to go back and adjust things. And you'll also notice I did back and forth lines so that I can shape out my design much easier than if I were to just guess and do an outline. So try to draw light sketchy lines and take your time because this is gonna be the center of your project. It's gonna be the main focus. So once your thing is drawn out, your emoji is exactly how you want it, then you're gonna take a Sharpie and you're gonna really neatly outline the circle and the major shapes for the face. So you can see that I thickened some of my lines. I went back over them a couple times just to make it a little thicker than the regular thickness of a Sharpie. And then just to finalize it, I'm gonna erase any of those extra pencil marks I see so that when I add color to it, it's nice and clean. Now to color in our emoji, we are gonna use liquid watercolors for the main yellow part. And we're gonna be adding shadows after the paint dries. So we want to make sure that anything we want white, because some of the emojis have white for teeth, or even some of them have for the eyes. Think about the colors you need, but for anything that you want yellow or a shade of yellow, we're gonna color with these liquid watercolors. The nice thing about these is that the color is really, really bright. I'm gonna give you a small brush so that you can really stay inside the lines and keep it nice and controlled. So fill in all of the spaces you want any form of yellow, and then we're gonna go in after it to add those shadows. So I finished the face and I actually am going to color in the eyes and the bottom part of the mouth because in my emoji that I chose, it's actually like a dark shade of yellow, like almost a light brown in the eyes and also the bottom of the mouth. But like I said, the teeth are gonna stay white, so I'm not gonna color that in. With liquid watercolors, it's gonna leave your paper very wet, so you don't wanna keep going over and over and over because it could make a hole in it. Right now, you can see how wet the paper is. We're gonna let this dry completely and then go in with the next step when it's totally dry. Now you can see that there's a lot less dark spots. My paint is dry and now I'm ready to go in with colored pencils, and that's gonna be for what we call highlights and shadows. So highlights are gonna be anything really bright, like white, where light is hitting our picture. And shadows are gonna be the darker colors, where there's no light hitting the image in your picture. So again, we can look at the actual pictures of the emojis to see where there's shadows. But for the most part, we have to remember that shadows are gonna be toward the outside of our shape And anytime we put shadows around the edge, it's just gonna make it look like it's popping out from the paper. Now you can do this in any order that you want, but I'm gonna start out doing the eyes and the mouth just because I didn't get to do that yet. And I'm gonna remember that the edges of everything I do should be darker and the inside should be lighter. So I'm gonna take my browns. I took a light brown and a dark brown. And first I'm just gonna, first I have to twist it up so that it's high enough to use, but I'm first gonna go in and just start shading a little bit of the eyes and the mouth, the whole shape, just so I have a little bit of a brown color to work with. Now, with shadows and shading, the way that you hold your pencil is gonna make a big difference. If you notice, I'm not gripping it like this, I'm holding it a little more slanted, and I'm using the side of the pencil. That's gonna give you a nice pencil mark from the colored pencil so that it's not so straight and not so hard. And it's just gonna blend out your color a little better. Now I'm just about finished doing the inside of those brown pieces, and I only use the light brown. Now if I wanna get darker, which I do because I wanna add a little bit of a shadow to the edge of this, I'm gonna leave this one on the side because it can't get much darker than that. And I'm gonna find a color that's darker than the one I used. Now I could use brown, I could even use black if I wanted it to be a little more. But now I'm gonna go around the edge and I'm gonna color a little bit around the edge of that shape. And I might have to go back with a darker color because see, that's not so much darker and I might wanna make it a little darker than that. So let me test it out and then I'll see if I wanna add a little more to it. Now I'm starting to see it pop out a little bit. You could probably see it too. And again, I'm just kind of going around the edges and you can see it kind of start to come up from the page. However, I think I want it a little more. It's not really popping up as much as I want it to. So let me just finish this part. And then what I'll do is I'll go in with more of like a black, a dark gray or a black, and I'll see if that helps me make it a little more 3D like I want it to. Okay, so that's what I want. I want to see a little more of that darkness around the edges, and that makes it come out a lot more than that. So I'm gonna just finish going around all the shapes that I started, and then we'll blend that out, and you'll see that it looks a lot more 3D. That's much better. That's exactly what I wanted it to look like. The only thing left that I have is the teeth and also the edge of the circle. So with the teeth, I'm gonna do the same thing, just super light. And I could do this with gray, I could do this with the brown. I think I'm gonna do a little overlap of both. Do a very, very light gray. Maybe not even in all the parts. I think I'm gonna just do it on the corners. And then I'll go in with my brown and touch that up as well. And you can see that really just kind of makes it pop out. Now the last touch of doing my shadows, you can see I'm using my wrist here to kind of blend out all those edges. And I'm using the side of my pencil to get rid of any of those pencil marks, just to smooth it out. And that's gonna give that nice 3D effect that I'd like. Okay, and I'm gonna move this in so you can really see up close how nice and blended that is. And then as we move it farther away, it gives it that nice effect. Now this next step of the project is going to be for the background around your emoji. And we want to pick 2 sets of patterns. And remember, a pattern is anything that repeats itself over and over. One of the patterns is going to be black and white. One of the patterns is going to be colors. So now we need to break our background up into 4 different sections. you can make your lines on the edge of your section straight or curved or really any kind of line that you want. I think I'm going to make my lines curved lines because I want to give it that look as if my pattern is moving. But again, you do not have to do this. You can do it any way that you'd like. So I actually ended up adjusting my lines a little bit. I had a different idea when I started and then I changed it. So that's the beauty of drawing with the pencil so lightly, where you can erase and you won't even know that you erased. And once you have your sections drawn out, so I have my 2 sections here and my 2 sections here. Again, however you want to draw it, straight lines, curvy lines, zigzag lines, whatever you'd like. You're going to trace it with a Sharpie. So I outlined everything with a Sharpie, and you might notice that I decided to make some parts a little thicker than a regular thickness of a Sharpie, and that is your personal preference. You can make it whatever thickness you'd like. Now you need to decide which 2 sections are going to be black and white, which 2 sections are going to be color. And you're going to start out with the black and white sections. Okay, so if you have a really, really complicated design where you don't feel like you need to do everything in pencil, then don't. You might skip that because you're going to have to erase all the pencil marks that are still there at the end. So think about your design you're going to do. Sketch out some basic things that you might want as a guide for you. And then you can go, just like we did with these outlines, with the Sharpie, and make sure that it is a really clean, really, really neatly drawn pattern in black and white. Now I decided for my black and white section of patterns, I want to do like a checkerboard kind of design. Now because this is straight sides, I'm using a ruler, so anything that's straight sides for you, grab a ruler, it'll make it a lot cleaner. But then I'm not going to fill in the checker parts that I want dark, because again, that's just extra pencil that I don't need. So as I go around, I'll just kind of lightly sketch out where I might want those checker marks to be, and then I will do the rest with just the Sharpie. Now, this is a part you definitely don't want to rush. I did all of the shapes. I was really paying attention because I didn't want to mess up my pattern, and that's kind of the whole point of this part. And then, now that I'm done, I'm just going around and touching up any of the edges or any parts I maybe missed, just really perfecting those patterns and the designs so that it's really clean on the background. Now, I chose something that's a little more complicated. You might choose to do something that's a little simpler. Okay, do something that you're comfortable with. Again, the biggest thing is that we want it to be really clean and really neat, and take your time so that it stands out as a nice background before we add our color in. Now the last step of the project is going to be our second pattern. And as we discussed, this is going to be made with colors. And for this part of the project, we're going to use something called alcohol markers. And instead of being made with water, like a regular water-based marker, washable marker would be, these are made actually with rubbing alcohol. It's the same kind of chemical that you use to clean a cut or a scrape. It's very, very strong. So when you use it, you're going to see that it comes out like a permanent marker that is very strong in color, and it also is going to go through the paper a little more than a washable marker would. Now on these markers, there are 2 sides. One side is going to be more of a thin tip to the marker, which is very small, And then the other side of the marker is going to be a thicker tip to the marker. Okay, so think about the size that you want. Now with these, you just heard that it clicks. It's very easy to put these caps on and not have it click and think it's closed, and then it'll dry out completely. So please make sure you hear the click when you're done using the side that you want. Now another suggestion for these markers, because again, they are very strong and they are not like washable markers, where the color that you see on the top of it may not match the color that comes out on paper. So I really suggest keeping a little piece of paper handy, just a piece of scrap paper, so that you can test out exactly how it shows up when you draw with it. So when you see that, you could see how much darker it comes out than the cap showed. So test out a few of the markers, see which ones you want to use, and then you're going to go in on your project and start making all of those color designs to fill in your color pattern. Now you saw the other purple I did was very dark, and you might choose to do that. I wanted more of a lavender color, so I tried it out, and this one actually does match the cap better. So you can see really how unpredictable it is and how important it is to test it out before you commit to it. Some of them will look exactly the same like this one, and others will not, like the other one that I did. So once you have the color that you want, again, think of the size of the marker tip that you want. I want the thicker side. Just because I want to fill space. I don't want little details for this, so I'm going to use the thicker side of the marker. And I'm deciding to do like a drip kind of pattern with my colors. So I will go around and do the pattern that I would like using the colors that I choose. So I'm holding my marker so that the thick side is on the paper, and you can see just how dark and bright and bold that color comes out. It almost is gonna look like paint if you color it in really well. So I'm gonna just trace around my bottom line that I want here, and then I'll go and repeat exactly what I'm doing, but with the other colors that I'm choosing, and move up my design. So I finished going in with all of my different colors and that drip pattern design that I wanted to do. And I like the way that it came out, but I want to use the thin side of the markers, I decided, just to outline some of these lines in between. I think it'll give it a nice look where they won't all be the same thickness. Again, this is just something that I'm totally deciding, just last minute on my own. So I'm gonna just go around and trace some of these. You do not have to do this. You're gonna have your own designs, your own patterns. I think this is just gonna give it a look that I'm gonna like a little better at the end of drawing this out. Okay, I just added a couple of those thin ones like I talked about, and it just makes some of the colors pop out a little more, I think, and I'm happy with how it is. So you make your design, you make your pattern, you put any finishing touches that you want with the thin side of the marker, the thick side of the marker, and you have your groovy emoji.